Right then, so once again we find ourselves locked into battle with this infernal Veradrive equipped MTD mower. I know the thing says white outdoor on the front of it, but it's an MTD through and through. So this mower, in case you're new to the channel and you haven't seen it around before, it's about 20 years old, and I bought this thing from my friend a couple years ago when I moved out to this house where it's got a lot of property. I think it's an acre and a half that I mow with it. And 2 years ago, it was an undersized, worn out mower. And now, all that time later, it's still undersized and it's even more worn out. So I've had a lot of fairly minor repairs to make with this mower. I've got another one I've been working on. You've seen this at the start of that project, the Cub Cadet's a lot larger mower. A lot larger unit's able to handle this property a lot better than this one is. But in the meantime, I've been using this one, and I just decided to keep it going as long as I could, unless something major happened like the engine blew on it. But it's still running. But like I said, I've had a lot of nickel and dime things go wrong with this. I had to put a starter on it, had to put a battery on it, had to put a fuel shutoff on, I had to rebuild the carburetor, had to put king beam bushings in it, had to rebuild the deck, had to put a deck belt on it. What else? Had to fix the solenoid when the solenoid rusted off the body. Had to redo the battery cables. Got a tire that's going flat now. It's too cracked to hold air very long. So it gives you an idea of what kind of shape this thing is in. Normally, just about anyone else would have had this thing sitting in the weeds at tractor land or someplace like that, or have been stripped for parts. They wouldn't have kept doing this ongoing job of repairing it. But since it still runs good and I don't have the other one fixed yet, then we're gonna keep fixing it as long as it's not too expensive. So the main problems I've had with this mower, in case you haven't figured it out now by the title of this video, is I've had problems with this Veradrive system on this thing continuously. Now Veradrive, if you're not familiar with those, it's an idea that MTD, I guess, came up with. Sometimes they call it different names. They called it Veradrive, they call it Transmatic. This thing here calls it Cruisematic, but it's all the same thing. It's basically a system that uses two belts that runs from the engine back to the axle back here. That's very crude, and it's meant to simulate a transmission that has 8 speeds in it. If you look over here at the gear shift, and it's got 8 speeds, right? Okay, well, that's pretty good, but the thing about it is that this thing sort of works on the CVT principle, but it's not really a CVT. It's not like a clutch on a snowblower or snowmobile or a motorcycle or golf cart, something like that. It's not a centrifugal clutch at all. It just sort of mimics it. So this thing's basically a big fake. It's not. It doesn't actually have an 8-speed transaxle in it. This transaxle back here is just a single-speed transaxle, and all it does is it has capability for forward, neutral, and reverse. That's all you got. So the heart of this thing, what makes it work, is if you look down in here, I think, do I have a light? Yes, I do have a light. Let there be light. If you look down in here, this thing has got this big pulley right here, and you kind of peer down in there, you see it's got 2 different grooves right there. There's a belt around the bottom groove, and there was a belt around the top groove. The belt is mostly off of it now. So the way this thing works is when you move this, it's hard to do with this camera being held in my hand here, so I'm not going to do it. But when you move this thing to different speeds, there's just a big bracket and a lever here, and it moves that pulley. That whole thing there slides up and back and forth like that. So that's what affects different speeds. And then this, as a result, this pulley, this thing in the center right here where I'm going to put my finger, this sheave as they call it, is supposed to move in relation to the top and the bottom of this thing, right? So that gives you, you know, when you make the pulley diameter change, then the ratio changes. So in effect, it turns this pulley that's on the it's not a transaxle, I keep calling it that, it's not one. Back there, probably can't even see it, but it's back there. It goes back to that axle back there, and the axle's got a big pulley on it, right? So that's the way the thing works. That's what gives you your different speeds. And then you got a clutch, which is not actually a clutch at all, but all it does, I'll do it for you. It just disengages the belt. That's all it does. So that's it. It's a very simple system. It's very crude. And unfortunately, when it gets old, it's very trouble prone because these things have bearings in them. That Veradrive unit or transmatic pulley or sheave or whatever the heck you want to call that thing's got bearings in it, which I've had to replace once already. And then here's a hummingbird outside my shed here. What are you doing in there? And not only that, but these things, if you let these mowers sit out in the rain and it gets rain down in here and it locks them up. So if you ever have one of these and you get it going again, it's only got one speed, guarantee you that this Veradrive thing here is seized up because it has to move up and down. So I have to periodically take that thing out and check the bearings and lubricate it with some oil. Not much, but some oil. So anyway, that's that. That's how this thing works. And it works okay. As long as when it works good. But when it doesn't work, or it starts wearing out, or things start breaking on, then you just have a heck of a time with it. It gets very frustrating and you have to keep fixing it. So the problem I've had with this thing, there's two belts on it. There's a big, larger belt from the crankshaft of the engine to that sheave pulley there. And then that's the one you saw on the bottom of it. And then the one that's supposed to be on the top that has come off and something's happened to it, that one goes to the axle pulley back there. And then it comes back around that. It's got what they call an idler. I don't think I showed you that, but you're going to see that thing in good detail here pretty soon. But that's the idler right there, that thing. So that's what keeps it tension, supposed to. So anyway, since I've used this thing on and on many hours for 2 years now, well over 2 years, I've gotten very, very attuned to when something's about to happen to it. And so it gives various symptoms that something bad's about to happen. So one of the things it does, and you can tell you're about to be stranded with it, is that you can smell rubber burning. It's one of these belts is starting to slip. Something's happened to it, and usually that happens when the belt has worn out and chunks are missing out of it. So when you start smelling rubber burning and you start slowing down a little bit, you better get it back to where you need to work on it because you're going to be pushing it. And then the second thing happens, sort of in relation to that, is all to do, second and third things, all to do this clutch pulley lever. It's a clutch pedal, but it's not a clutch pedal. It's just an engagement lever, really. Engagement pedal. Whatever you want to call it. Make up something. I don't care. But all has to do with that. The second and third thing. The second thing is your engagement on these things is normally, when it's working right, it's supposed to be fairly smooth. And when something starts going wrong with the pulleys or the belts, or something's going on in there that's not good, then you start, when you let this pedal off, you start to get a real jerky engagement with it. That's another thing. You watch out for that. So if it does that, you got trouble coming. And then the third thing is your clutch. I keep calling it out, but we'll call it the clutch pedal. Let's just have fun and call it the clutch pedal. See, they call it that. It's the brake and the clutch pedal. It does two things at once, although the brakes don't work on this anymore. But anyway, the clutch pedal starts to feel funny with it, because when it's working good, it feels like you got something in there working, some resistance. But when it starts getting like kind of soft, then again, you better get it back to the work area. Oh yeah, I forgot the fourth thing. You watch this clutch pedal while your foot's off of it and you're mowing or doing whatever you're doing, you're traveling with it. You watch this thing, when the belt starts going out, it'll start kind of doing this number. That's a direct representation of what's going on with the belt up there. So be careful and watch that. So that's about the four things that it does leading up to total failure with this thing. And what happens when that happens is it just doesn't move anymore. You have the engine on and it in gear, and you let out on the clutch pedal and you just don't go anywhere. You're sitting there. You're just stuck. So anyway, that's that. That's how this thing works. That's the story of this particular lawnmower. And this is why people kind of dread these things. And why they're kind of fussy. And why a lot of people seem not like them. I can't say that I like them. But so, brings us to the present. I typically mow the grass up here on Friday or Saturday in the evenings. So I think last Friday afternoon it was. I had to go out of town over the weekend. So I mowed grass a little early. Might have been Friday afternoon. I was mowing. And I mowed all my property here. I got everything done. Went all the way around. Did front, did side, did the back. And I was all the way up at the road up there. Under the trees that are up there. Way on up there. That big tree way down yonder. And I started getting a whiff of burning belt. So I knew that, even though I just put the belts on this thing a couple months ago, that trouble was brewing. So, and I noticed at the same time, those things I named off to you, those all started happening. I let off on the clutch to take off, and it's kind of jerky, and then the clutch didn't feel right, so I thought, well, it's about over. It's time to go back to the service area here and work on it. Even though I'm not done with the yard yet. So I came back down here, and when I got down about right here, miraculously everything seemed to cure itself. I didn't smell any more things burning, and the clutch felt a little bit better. So I thought, okay, well, maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe it just got hot. Maybe the belts were hot. Who knows? You know, that's what I wanted to believe. So stupidly, I did a U-turn and went back up and did the strip along where the driveway is up there. And I thought, well, this is going good. And guess what? You know it. You know what happened. I got all the way up to the end of my driveway, and I'm going to mow around the light up there and along the front, just do a little patch there. And I got about right up there, right on the road up there, and it quit. Quit moving. Wouldn't do anything. And like I said, as a veteran, being a veteran of owning one of these things, I know better than to ever even just sit there and try to make it do something, because it's like this. It either does something or it doesn't. It doesn't come back. It doesn't start to miraculously work again after it quits moving. When it quits moving forever until you fix it. So what to do? Well, I pushed it back here. So that leads us to now. So I know what's wrong with it. I've already ordered the parts to fix it. It took at least one belt out. It may have taken the bottom belt out, but what it did this time was not what I thought it had done. I thought I just lost the belt, but it's worse than that. So it's not worse in the terms of something bad happened to it. It's just, we had a failure. So I'm going to take off the offending piece here, and we're going to examine it. It's kind of interesting. I didn't expect that to be what was wrong with it. So I'm going to get that thing out of there, and we'll look at it and see what happened to this piece of junk. Right, so here's the culprit. So this is this idler I was telling you about. That's what they call it. So it's actually spring loaded, but they call it an idler pulley. And as you can see, this thing, evidently the bearing in it locked up, got hot and seized up, and this quit turning, and the belt chewed its way through almost half of it, and that's what happened. It tore the belt up pretty good, but I cut the belt because it was stuck under both pulleys, and there's stuff wrapped around the pulleys. Pieces of this stuff is wrapped around each pulley, so I got to take the fair drive out, and I got to take the battery out and get to the rear pulley and get it all cleaned out. You can't have anything stuck in that Vera drive or your gears won't work right. So this belt's probably a month and a half old, so it's junk. Not more. I don't buy the MTD belts. I'm not going to. It's just too much money. So yeah, this is pretty bad. But you know, this looks like the original. You can't buy a plastic one anymore, I don't believe, unless you can get a new old stock one somewhere. And why would you want to? You can see here that it's got a bolt that holds it down, is all it is. The bolt's okay, it didn't hurt the bolt, but you can see this thing, that center, whatever you want to call that, the bearing tube is no longer perfectly perpendicular to the flat side of the pulley. And it looks like this had tried to happen a couple times beforehand. You can see it's got a burn spot right there, and then it's got several chewed spots around sides there. So nice molten piece of plastic right there. So it looks like it happened, I don't know, I guess just once, but got a little ball bearing in there. See the ball bearings, and there's some of them missing. So yeah, it got pretty hot, I'll say that for it. But that's just what happens sometimes. You don't look in there to see what's going on, you just keep on going until it stops. Now, if that was the motor doing that, I would have stopped. But just this, I thought it was a belt. So, anyway, so I got a replacement for this. The replacement's metal, and they're just dirt cheap. So this one is made by Stens. Genuine replacement parts. So that's a little bit of word salad right there. Genuine replacement parts. Genuine what replacement parts? Stens doesn't make lawnmowers. Stens makes parts. I guess this just must mean that this is an actual Stens parts. Guaranteed quality. Now, it's just a little snapshot of our current world as it is. It proudly says right on here, made in USA. There's the part number if you need to know. It replaces MTD 756-0643A. But when we look at this nice metal pulley, it looks pretty nice. But if we peer down in here at the bearing, or at least the bearing seal, it, guess what? Made in China. But I don't care. I'm beyond caring now. I'm just going to put it on and go with it. So I'm going to do that in the morning. It's getting on towards kind of late in the evening, and I need to work in the garden a little bit, and it's very humid out here, and may also do some bird feeding as well. Getting low on bird seed. I know someone's at Walmart where I get bird seed because it's the cheapest for what I buy. They are down to the bottom nearly on black oil sunflower, so I'm kind of worried about that. So anyway, guys, so I don't think I'm going to video how to do this repair. I'll probably give you some highlights, just kind of tell you. I just kind of point and film, because there's many good videos, I'm sure, on YouTube and everywhere else, tutorials on how to replace all these belts and all this stuff, and they probably do a better job than I would, because it's hard to film in that. That's a very confined location. I just barely get my hand in there. So tomorrow I gotta end up taking, like I said, taking the battery out and getting into that, and I don't like doing that because that battery box is rusted out and it's made out of license plate tags, license plates. So anyway, we'll get this thing back together and see if it works. Alright, so here's this variator assembly, and simply it is just pulley with two sheaves, or one sheave I guess, that can move up and down, and you can see how this belt, when it came apart and got wrapped up around there, it's tangled up. There's no way I could have really got that out for sure without taking this off. So it's not hard to get off the mower. You just have a stud that comes up, and then you, up here you've got a little washer, and then you have a snap ring. And what I do is I just leave the bottom belt on the mower, and I push the clutch all the way in. This thing pulls this thing and loosens the tension on the bottom belt from the engine, and you can work it off there. And so one thing to note is this has needle bearings in it up here, top and bottom. So I always try to put some grease in these whenever I have this thing off for any reason. So I'll be sure to do that now. And then you just put it back together, put the belts on. Hopefully this thing is fixed. We hope. All right then, so I've serviced this variator, whatever you want to call it. Put a little bit of grease in each of the roller bearings there, needle bearings, case may be, whatever. And just put a couple drops of oil on this sheave. So now it moves nice and freely. You want it to be where if you pick it up and drop it, it just goes right down. If it sticks, you gotta lube it. So you really don't have to take this off to do that part of it, because there's a hole right there that you can just add a couple drops of oil into periodically, and that does the same thing. You just don't want to overdo it because you have a belt in here. And this VariDrive it needs to be replaced if I were going to just try to make this mower last a lot longer, because this one is pretty rusty on the upper side of it. That's probably what's contributing to wearing my belts out. But I'm not going to deal with it. You can see the bottom one had so much use on it that it's actually worn places in the metal from the belts. So I don't know how many hours this whole thing has on it, but it's a lot. So all right, so the main thing now is just to put this back together, and should be it. I keep saying that it should be it. Well, I hope it's it. I hope it works, because I need to mow. So let me throw her back together, guys. I want to show you the correct orientation of this rear upper drive belt. Sorry for the shaky lighting here, but you have the large axle pulley, which is this guy here, and the belt comes back straight along. Let me reposition here a little bit. Straight along the left side right there. I always have to remove this thing here, which is a bracket for the gear direction selector, and let it hang loose, because the belt has to run behind that. Well, it doesn't have to run behind it, but it runs under it. You can't get to it. That's right, there's a lever there, so you have to take that loose, and it just runs up forward right around the upper groove of that variator, and then it comes out of the variator and it goes around this guy here that I just replaced, like that, and then it goes back here and goes around the axle pulley again. So not fun to work in this thing, because not much space, and you end up bruising your hands up and everything. You get older, you start having these bruises on your hands. Young guys don't have that, but okay, so I've got to put my homemade battery box back in, put the battery back in, pump that tire up, and we'll fire it up. Cross your fingers. Okay then, so I have got all this back together. I left the cover off for direct observation here for a little while, so I gassed it up, checked the oil, aired the tire up. So I think we're ready to cold start this thing. Give a little choke, a little throttle. I'll tell you, it needs a solenoid. don't think it's supposed to do that. They're running the clutch when it's just sitting there. I think the clutch is out of adjustment, so to speak. The clutch, so to speak, is out of adjustment. But it looks okay. Everything looks like it's going to work, so I guess I'll put the cover back on it. You saw I had a little difficulty getting it out of that shed. That's some tight quarters back there. But the one thing you notice, I let the clutch out. I don't know if you were noticing that, but I let the clutch out and it didn't go anywhere. When you put these things back together the first time like that, when it's been apart, sometimes you have the way that variator is, just by the design of it, it is not set just where it's going to take off in your low speed, so you may not have your low speed just for the first little bit. You have to run up through the gears and then come back and it works. So, and sometimes when the belts stretch a little bit, your slow speed may get slower, and it may work better, so don't be too awful concerned about that. And yeah, I need to clean this thing up. This is, you can see that essentially what we have here is my front yard included is just a hay field, so that's what we get in the mower. And the mower's got all kinds of oil leaks too, so it's just an old rag, man. So anyway, we'll put this thing back in action, I suppose. So thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask, or comments, or anything like that, and I'll be happy to address them for you. So I don't know how many people are still dealing with these things, but I am. So we've hopefully got the upper hand on it once again. See you around.